Welcome to another episode of the Ginger Romance. Here, you'll hear anonymous stories from travellers all over the world. Real submissions from real people. Tales of connection, romance, passion, heartbreak, friendship, and love in all its forms. Because every kind of love deserves to be told. This week on the Ginger Romance, we share a huge mistake set in Koh Rong, Cambodia. This travel dating story isn't only about Tinder. It's about watching someone slowly reveal who they are before you've even met them. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest red flags can appear before the first date, and that trusting your instincts can be the best decision you make. Let's get into it. I'd never used Tinder while travelling before. It had never really appealed to me. But while I was spending a few nights on Koh Rong Island, curiosity got the better of me. I figured, why not? At worst, I'd have a few conversations. At best, maybe I'd meet someone interesting before continuing my holiday. That's when I matched with him. He lived in Sihanoukville, the mainland city where I was already planning to spend 2 nights before flying to Siem Reap. The timing seemed perfect. He was incredibly good-looking, but more importantly, our conversation flowed easily. We chatted about work, life, travel, goals, and the future. At first, he seemed positive, ambitious, and genuinely interesting. But looking back now, I think the red flags started appearing far earlier than I wanted to admit. We started talking about meeting up for a date. I told him I'd be there on the 12th and 13th, before flying out on the 14th to Siem Reap. The problem was, he was on annual leave from the 15th to the 20th. He asked me if I could extend my stay. I'd already booked my accommodation and flights, so no. Without missing a beat, he replied, "Then I'll come to Siem Reap with you." That caught me completely off guard. We hadn't even met. I barely knew him. I told him we should just stick to coffee or dinner plans. To him, that seemed like an unnecessary precaution. To me, it was common sense. As the days went on, his messages became noticeably more intense. He would say things like, "If we vibe hard, then I'm all in." Those kind of messages would have flattered an earlier version of me. But now, they just made me uneasy. I've experienced love bombing before. I knew how quickly excitement could disguise desperation. And instead of feeling swept off my feet, I found myself slowly pulling away. I wasn't excited to reply anymore. I started leaving messages unanswered for longer. The truth was, I was starting to think that I didn't really want to meet him anymore. I just hadn't worked up the courage to say it. While I was out for dinner one night, he sent me a voice note asking how my day had been. When I hadn't replied, another message came through. "I guess you're busy. Message me when you're free." It was harmless enough. When I got back to my room about an hour later, I replied. The next morning, I woke to a message waiting for me. "Morning beautiful." Normally, I wouldn't complain about being called beautiful. But from someone I'd never met, it didn't feel flattering. It felt forced. And somehow, that simple message was the beginning of everything going downhill. The conversation drifted onto past relationships. He told me his last relationship had ended because his girlfriend wanted him to convert to Islam. "I'm Christian," he explained. "I'm not religious," I replied. Then came a question I wasn't expecting. "If we were together, would you follow my religion?" "No," I replied. No hesitation, no maybe, just no. The conversation carried on, but I started noticing a pattern. Everything seemed to always jump 10 steps ahead. At one point, we exchanged Instagram accounts and started looking through each other's photos. He only had a handful of posts, and none of them were recent. Then my phone buzzed. Your face is a nice, cute face. Another message. Thick and your boobs are lit. Then another message. Do you go to the gym? I guess that ass is huge too. I laughed to myself awkwardly and responded, No, not huge. Then he sent another message. You gotta hit the gym. I'll help you build your glutes. Get you a more perfect body. I stared at my phone. I honestly didn't know how to respond. All I could think of was, if you don't like me as I am, that's completely fine. He didn't seem to understand why what he said might have upset me. He responded, It's not about what you think. It's about what needs to be done. I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny. It wasn't just the words themselves. It was the fact that this was coming from someone who had never met me and who was already talking about changing my body. Then, just when I thought we'd moved on, he managed to make it worse. I like your friends, he said. I thought, great, maybe we're finally moving away from the comments about my body. I was wrong. Another message appeared. One thing I confuse myself about white people is that I think you all look older at first sight. You said you were 36, but in my eyes, you look more than that. Sorry. What? I was really laughing out loud by this point. I responded with a simple, I am 36, but thanks, I guess. I could not believe he was digging himself into an even deeper hole. Instead of backtracking, he doubled down. I met a 25-year-old lady recently. I guessed she was 35, and she got so angry at me. Yeah, telling a woman she looks older than she is generally isn't the compliment you think it is. Then he said, I think it's because I see models more than normal people. I don't pay attention to normal people. I had to read that message twice. Oh, so you normally date models? He said, No. When I'm out and about, I don't look at normal people. I look at weird and special people to understand where the world is heading. I honestly had no idea what he was talking about. It felt like every message contradicted the one before it. Trying to make sense of it, I joked, Well, I'm pretty normal. Why are you talking to me then? He ignored the question completely. And instead, he launched into a rant about dating in Cambodia. Women here only want money. If they ask for money before meeting, that's basically prostitution. No wonder I don't vibe with the local people, he said. They're a threat to me. Young, pretty locals, but zero IQ. I couldn't do anything but just stare at my phone. Then came another message. They're racist too. Before I could even process that, another one arrived. I lived in China for years. It was even worse there. People told my girlfriend to poison me because I'm black. There may have been genuine hurt behind those experiences, and I don't doubt that some of them were painful. But the way he spoke about entire groups of people made me uncomfortable, and it was becoming exhausting trying to keep up with this conversation. He kept talking about how those experiences made him stronger, how he'd changed his mindset, how he'd learned not to trust people. Then he casually dropped another sentence that caught my attention. I don't have friends. I only have family. I don't do friends. You're either my lover or someone I greet as I walk past. I paused. There seemed to be no middle ground with him. Everything was either all in or nothing at all. All I could respond was, as long as you're happy. It was the safest response I could think of. By that point, I'd mentally checked out of the conversation. I wasn't looking forward to meeting him anymore. That evening, I headed out for dinner on my own. At 8:30, a voice note popped up. Are you back at your hotel yet? 4 minutes later, another. Then a video call. I declined it. Seconds later, 2 more voice notes arrived. I was just wondering if you were back in your room. It's boring here tonight. The wording made me uncomfortable. Not because he'd messaged more than once, but because I suddenly felt like he wanted to know exactly where I was. I finally got back to my hotel around 9:15 and sent him a message. I'm pretty tired. I'm going to head to bed. But that wasn't entirely true. I just didn't have the energy for another marathon conversation. His reply came almost immediately. I just want to ask you one tough question. I sighed. Sure, I responded, thinking, here we go. Do you really want to settle down with a partner? Oh, for goodness sakes. We haven't even met. I responded, when I meet the right person, sure, why wouldn't I be? His response? Because humans are evil. He went on to explain that he desperately wanted a long-term relationship, but that he didn't trust people anymore. He was scared of getting hurt. I could understand that feeling. Most of us have been hurt at some point. But there was something about the intensity of it all that felt overwhelming. I tried to offer some perspective. Just don't settle with someone simply because you want a relationship. It still has to be the right person. He ignored that too. Instead, another long message landed. There's no love anymore. I nearly became gay because I can't understand women. I wasn't even sure where to begin with that sentence, so I focused on the only part that made sense. I asked him, are you actually attracted to men? No, he replied. I just think that men stay together. Women always leave. I found myself giving relationship advice to someone I already knew I wasn't going to meet. I settled with the response, romantic love and friendships are completely different things. He agreed, sort of, then explained that before we met, he wanted us to both think very deeply about whether there was a future together. Again, we still haven't even met. Not once. I just stopped replying for a while. Surely the conversation would naturally end. Instead, he sent another novel. And this one would completely change the direction of the conversation. He started telling me about his first serious relationship. His ex had been older than him, and he said she treated him well, but eventually he realized she only wanted him for physical intimacy. According to him, that experience had completely changed the way he viewed relationships. I wasn't really sure what he wanted me to say. And then the conversation shifted again. He explained that physical intimacy was incredibly important to him in a relationship. More important than anything I'd ever heard someone describe so early on. He admitted it had caused problems before, but insisted he wanted me to understand who he was before we even met. I found myself wondering whether this was honesty or whether it was something much more concerning. He kept explaining. He described what he believed a relationship should look like, how often partners should be physically close, and why he thought it was completely normal. The more he talked, the less compatible we seemed. It wasn't even about one opinion anymore. It was the way every topic became incredibly intense, incredibly quick. There was no room for getting to know each other naturally. Everything felt rushed. Everything felt absolute. There was no space for curiosity, getting to know each other, or simply seeing what happened. Eventually, I asked him, so is physical intimacy the most important part of a relationship for you? No, he replied. I like holding hands, shopping together, swimming, going to the gym together. For a brief second, I thought we'd finally found some common ground. Then he added, "But after all of that, we come home and be intimate." And just like that, the conversation immediately swung back to the same topic. It felt like every road somehow led back there. I realized I wasn't trying to understand him anymore. I was trying to work out how to end the conversation politely. Then another message appeared. "I just wanted you to know this part of me. The rest of me is easygoing." I took a deep breath and finally typed the message I'd been avoiding. "I appreciate you being honest with me, but I don't think this is something I want to be involved in." His reply came almost instantly. "It's okay, let's just see how it goes." He hadn't understood, or maybe he just didn't want to. So I tried again. I told him there have been quite a few things in our conversation today that have made me rethink meeting. I don't think we're very compatible, so I think it's best we leave it here. "Why?" he asked. "I don't think it's a huge problem." "It isn't just one thing," I replied. "It's the comments about my body. It's the way you've spoken about relationships. I don't think we see things the same way." He still couldn't understand. "I was only trying to help you improve your body," he wrote. "A man who doesn't tell you the truth is the problem." I couldn't believe we were still talking about this. I responded, "The fact that you think my body needs improving, that's the problem." And for the first time all day, there was a pause. Then finally, he said, "I'm sorry if I offended you." I accepted the apology for what it was, but it didn't change anything. "I'm going to leave things there," I replied. "I hope you understand." I put my phone down, and I honestly felt relieved. The conversation was over. Or so I thought. The next morning, I woke up to another notification. "Good morning, beautiful." As though what I said yesterday had never happened. He followed it with another message saying he wasn't working that day, so could we spend some time chatting and do a video call? I didn't reply. Part of me hoped that by not engaging, he would understand the message I was trying to send. Later that afternoon, another message. "I told you not to be mad. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. That evening, "How's your day going?" I still didn't reply. The following night, he tried calling me. I let it ring out. For a couple of days, everything went quiet. I finally relaxed. I assumed he'd gotten the message. Then another notification appeared. You really ignored me for real. Wow." Against my better judgment, I replied. I thought I'd made it clear that I didn't think there was anything more to say. He answered almost immediately. "Please, let's just meet." I couldn't believe he was still asking. "Sorry, I'm flying to Siem Reap today," I replied. Then he said, "Well, what if I come to Siem Reap?" I just stared at the screen. Was he serious? "I'm not comfortable with that," I replied. And I genuinely believed that would be the end of it. A few days passed without hearing from him. For the first time all week, I stopped checking my notifications with a sense of dread. I figured he'd finally accepted that I wasn't interested. Then my phone buzzed. It was him. I sighed before opening the message. There wasn't much text, just a location pin. "I'm here, ha ha ha. But it's okay, I'm not coming to you. Just be happy, okay?" I tapped on the location. My stomach dropped. 600 meters away. I read the message again. "I'm here, but I'm not coming to you." What? I'd never told him where I was staying. I hadn't invited him, and I'd already made it very clear that I didn't want to meet him. So why was he in Siem Reap? And more importantly, why send me his location if it had nothing to do with me? I sat there trying to convince myself there had to be a perfectly innocent explanation. Whether he'd travelled there because of me or not didn't matter anymore. Maybe he really had planned to come to Siem Reap anyway. Maybe it was just an unfortunate coincidence. But even if that was true, sending me a location pin after I repeatedly told him I wasn't comfortable meeting completely crossed a line. It didn't reassure me. It unsettled me. I blocked him immediately. Thankfully, I never saw him in Siem Reap. At least, not that I know of. I left Cambodia a few days later, but the whole experience stayed with me. The strange thing is, it wasn't one huge red flag that changed my mind. It was dozens of little ones. The love bombing, talking about our future before we'd met, the comments about my body, telling me I looked older than I was, the constant messages, the attempts at video calls, ignoring my boundaries, refusing to accept no. Then finally, that location pin. That trip was my first experience using Tinder while traveling. It wasn't dramatic enough to make the news, and it wasn't a horror story, but it was enough to become the reason I stopped using Tinder. Not because I think everyone on dating apps is like him. Far from it. I've heard plenty of incredible stories from people who've met lifelong friends, partners, and even spouses while traveling. Maybe one day I'll give it another go, but next time I'll trust the first uneasy feeling, not the 15th. Because sometimes your instincts are trying to protect you long before you have enough evidence to explain why. And sometimes the hardest boundary to set isn't saying no to someone else. It's trusting yourself enough to say no when nothing terrible has happened yet. And looking back now, I'm incredibly glad I listened to mine before there was ever a first date. That's where the story ends, but not where my thoughts do. Wow. This man said some outrageous things. What stood out to me the most wasn't just one single thing he said. It was how many small moments made her uncomfortable and how easy it can be to talk yourself out of trusting that feeling. Sometimes we wait for a huge red flag before we give ourselves permission to walk away. But what if we don't need one? What if feeling uneasy, pressured, or like someone's boundaries don't align with yours is already enough information? At what point do we stop looking for reasons to give someone a chance and start trusting ourselves when something just doesn't feel right? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll catch you in next week's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure you're following along to keep up to date with weekly stories that will inspire, entertain, and maybe even make you fall in love with the idea of love itself. Got your own romance story and want to be a part of the Ginger Romance community? Check the notes for details on how to submit your own.